Good morning, class. This is Ishita ma'am, and I'm again back with the teaching learning video. So, I have been teaching you the chapter packing, and in my last video, I have introduced the very text or the very novel, Three Men in a Boat in front of you, along with the introduction to Jerome Klapka Jerome. I've also started with the chapter packing of your syllabus, chapter 7 of your Beehive book. So, in the chapter, I have told you, or let me just recapitulate the part which I have already done last day, that it's the author, J, or the narrator of the text. He says that he would pack. I've told you the context of these prose piece, that it is the packing that the three friends were doing just the day before they were supposed to leave for their voyage on the River Thames. So there the three friends, of course, George, Harris and Jay or Jim. So Jay said that he would pack, and without any hesitation, George and Harris agreed to his suggestion and said, and did not say anything rather, but they just relaxed themselves. Okay, and there it was Jay who was completely irritated because the time when he had told that he would pack, he meant something different. He thought he would not do any work manually, but he would be going around bossing the people or bossing his friends to do this and to do that. And with that, he also says that he has once been with a person who used to loll on the sofa and used to see the author doing his work. But the author says that his energetic nature is not so of lying down lazily, but to go around and boss around and let others potter under his directions. So we are supposed to start from para 4. However, I did not say anything but started the packing. It seemed a longer job than I had thought it was going to be. But I got the bag finished at last, and I sat on it and strapped it. Now, before I go on explaining, if you go through the novel, you'll be seeing that three of these friends, they were not very lean or lanky or thin, but they were quite very heavily statured. Okay, so here what happened that I did not say anything, but I started the packing. So the author found that the job was a bit longer one, and he had finished it at last. And after he finished it, he sat on it and strapped it. So after the packing was done, the hefty man sat on it. Okay, so yesterday or in my last video, I told you that this is the very essence of laughter in Jerome K. Jerome's writing, that he takes along the small things. Okay, small things like the very petty issues that can make us laugh, or the petty or the ordinary things that would make us laugh or can arouse laughter as being done by any of these common people, or like the friends or the broad-headed friends like that of Jerome K. Jerome in the text. So he has completed his packing and he sat on it and he strapped it. Ain't you going to put the boots in? Said Harris. And I looked round and found I had forgotten them. And that's just like Harris. He couldn't have said a word until I had got the bag shut and strapped, of course. And George laughed, one of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. They do make me so wild. So what happened? Just the moment he had completed his packing and he was sitting there, Harris just looked and said that ain't you going to put the boots in? Now, he could have told it just before Jim or Jay would have strapped the bag. He could have told before that also, but Harris did not do. Just after Jay has completed the packing, he then reminded him of the boots. And this is something, of course, it can irritate anyone, and it was irritating for Jay also. And with that, it was George who laughed at this thing. And those laughs were nothing but those irritating ones. The laugh seemed to be quite very senseless. And the author agrees that those laughs make him so wild. I opened the door and packed the boots in. And then, just as I was going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to me. Had I packed my toothbrush? I don't know how it is, but I never to know whether I have packed my toothbrush. So again, a small thing. Packing of a toothbrush. Many times we might also miss it, but toothbrush is not a thing that would bother us or that would come as our nightmare. But this thing is happening with Jay here. Just the moment he opened the bag and he packed the boots in, suddenly he remembered that did I bring my toothbrush or did I pack my toothbrush? So it's a horrible idea that occurred to him. Because the author does not know, or Jay does not know, that why at times he never do know, or he never does do know about the fact that whether he had packed his toothbrush or not. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I am traveling and makes my life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration and get out of bed and hunt for it, and in the morning I pack it before I have used it and have to unpack again to get it, and it is always the last thing I turn out of the bag, and then I repack and forget it and have to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station wrapped up in my pocket handkerchief. So what happened? Or with this toothbrush episode, let me just tell you, this is something important for your short answer type question. Okay, that what are the adventure that the author goes through with his toothbrush. So anytime when he is traveling, toothbrush is a thing that makes the author's life a misery, or the narrator's life a misery. And he often dreams that he has not packed it. Okay, he at times when he is just about to go somewhere, so at the night he often dreams that he has not packed his toothbrush. Okay, and then he used to wake up in cold perspiration, all completely drenched. He gets up there that he has forgotten to take the toothbrush, and then he used to go get out of his bed and hunt for it right there at the night only. And then in the next morning, before using it, he used to pack it again. And then what happened? Then he needs to repack and forget it again. And then once he is out, he has to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and used to carry that to the railway station wrapped up in his pocket handkerchief. So finally, with all this thing, that when he thinks of it, he wakes up from the dream, a nightmare comes and he wakes up in cold perspiration, and then he used to hunt for it right there at the night, and then in the morning before using it he used to pack it and again and unpack it to use it, and used to keep it there. And once he is outside, at the last moment, he remembers that he has forgotten the toothbrush. He needs to rush upstairs again and wrap up the toothbrush in his pocket handkerchief. So every time with the toothbrush, it is something kind of a mess that used to happen with the narrator. Of course, I had to turn every mortal thing out now, and of course, I could not find it. So today also, when the author was packing, he finally did not get his toothbrush, and from the bag, means whatever packing he had already completed, he needed to unpack all those things, but he could not find it. I rummaged the things up into much the same state that they rummaged means searched in a hurried or careless way, and then I must have been before the world was created and when chaos reigned. Okay, see here with the diagram, it is that both of them laughing at him, and though the pictures are not being portrayed as a hefty one, but yes, with the novel's description, it is so. So he needed to unpack or remake everything, and it was scattered in such a way that it would have been just the way the world would have looked just before the chaos reign or when the world was created. Means everything was scattered in a very disorganized way. Of course, I found George and Harris's 18 times over, but I couldn't find my own. I put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. Then I found it inside a boot. I repacked once more. Now here, I told you last day that they are being regarded as three dull-headed, three idiotic people. And there, we can get it very clearly that you think of yourself whenever you're going out, you pack things. Very good. But then packing of toothbrush is done separately, isn't it? In a separate chamber of the bag, we do keep the toothbrush or the toothpaste or our necessary things which we would get it or which we would need. And then with the heavy things out, we do not keep these things. But here you see, the whole things are being packed together, and so it's so difficult for him to find his toothbrush. So at the time when he was going through, he found Harris and George's 18 times over. That is more than 18 times their toothbrushes were found. But then he could only get but he couldn't get his own. And then what did he do? One by one, each of the things were all shaken and then put inside the bag. And finally, the boot that was there, the toothbrush was inside it. Okay, and then I repacked once more. So again, the whole thing was repacked by J. When I had finished, George asked if the soap was in. I said I didn't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it wasn't, and I slammed the bag shut and strapped it, and found that I had packed my spectacles in it and had to reopen it. It got shut up finally at 10:05 p.m., and then there remained the hampers to do. So the main bag which he was supposed to pack. So what happened after he completed everything? George asked if the soap was in or not, but Jay said that he didn't mind that whether the soap was in or not, and he shut and strapped the bag finally. But then he remembered that he had packed his spectacles inside the bag, so he had to reopen it, and finally it got shut at 10:05 p.m. So when the main luggage was packed, it was the hampers that were left for George and Harris to pack. So Harris said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time, and thought that he and George had better do the rest. And I agreed and sat down, and they had a go. So Harris also reminded that before 12 hours time, that before it's the midnight, they must all complete the packing. And so he and George will be doing the rest. And Jay agreed and he sat down. And George and Harris had a go. So even more chaotic the situation will become. Right. So they began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. Now this line is very tricky to understand. Often we get questions or we give questions that according to Jay, who is the worst packer of the world? Now see, with the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. So Harris is not the worst packer. The worst packer is George. But if we leave George with the exception of George, okay, if George is an exceptional case, so if George is out of all this, Harris is the worst packer in this whole world. So these two men started with a very light-hearted spirit that it's just packing and it's all very easy thing for them, and it was just to show Jay that how good packers they are. Okay, the one which was Jay trying to prove, now it is the same thing that George and Harris are all trying to prove again. So it is said that Harris, with the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. and I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would be soon become exciting. So, just when the hampers were left to do, hampers, you know that for things that we have, the luggage that we carry, carrying our food, carrying our fruits and all such utensils, necessary thing. So the hampers were supposed to be packed, and the piles of plates, cups, kettles, bottles, jars, pies, stoves, everything, cakes, tomatoes also, everything was there kept, and he felt that the thing would soon become exciting. So Jay felt that it would be an exciting thing that will be coming in front of them. It did. They started with breaking a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. So it's just like the ice breaking session. You know, the inaugural program that we have for an annual day or any. So we often choose the inaugural program to be one of the best performances. Why? Because to grab the attention, that if the inaugural program is so good, we can understand that what will be the class of the program that is coming in front of us or will be shown there later on. So this is what happened with them also. The ice breaking session, that the packing started with just breaking of a cup. And this is the first thing they did. And then they could just to make you understand, to keep you interested, they have all done it just to show you that what are the more things that they could do in future. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it. And they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. So what happened? Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato. I told you that they were one of those idiotic people. So a tomato, and at the top of it a strawberry jam was kept, and then the tomato squashed, obviously, and then they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. With a teaspoon, the tomato was scraped out of that thing. And then it was George's turn, and he trod on the butter. I didn't say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. Just when you see something very great, you often have the admiration to have a clear view of it. So this is what the man or Jay did here. So then Harris packed the strawberry jam, it's done, and then it was George's turn. So what did George do? George there trod on the butter. And the narrator did not say anything, but he came over and sat at the edge of the table and watched the whole thing out there. See, a clear view. It's George who has trod on the butter, and it's Harris there busy with the hampers. It's Montmorency sitting by the side of George, and here Jay, the narrator. So, what happened after this? See, it irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that. It made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed the pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. Now this, I guess everybody will agree with me that this is something that happens with all of us, that whenever we get someone or we can understand that someone is observing us or looking at us when we are doing something important, we are prone to make mistakes. In exam halls, when the teachers come and stand beside you, either you fumble while writing, or you make errors, or you make scratches, like this it happens, or a teacher asks you to do something and she stands in front of you, and there you go along doing wrong things at times. So it irritated them more than anything. So the same thing happened with George and Harris as well. When they understood that it was Jay who came and sat at the edge of the table just to have a better view of all the chaos that they were supposed to do, so what happened? It irritated them. And what did they do? It made them nervous and excited. They were all nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them. So first they started stepping on things. The things were all scattered and kept there. So they started stepping on them and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And things were not to be found when he wanted them or when they wanted them. And then the pies were packed at the bottom and heavy things were put on the top. And the pies were all smashed. Of course, when you put heavy things on pies, it of course would smash. They upset salt over everything. And as for the butter, I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. Now, this phrase that I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter. Okay, the lump of butter which only can cost 1 and 2 pence. It's just a silly thing. But he says, or the narrator says, that he has never thought someone or never seen somebody to be upset with a butter which is just a worth of 1 and 2 pence. And with that, they have upset salt over everything. And then, after George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in the kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. So what happened? George had to get it off his slipper. So the butter that was trodden and it was all tried to be put it in the kettle. So first it was taken out of the sleeper and then in the kettle it was tried to be put in. But it didn't go in. And something that was left out was, so the part of the butter, some part of it was going in and some part of it was out. The part which was it was not coming out and the whole thing was not getting in also. So they did scrape it out at last and put it down on a chair. And then the lump of butter was scraped out at last and it was put down on a chair. And Harris sat on it and the lump of butter stuck to him. And they went looking for it all over the room. So what happened? The lump of butter was kept and Harris then sat on that butter. And I guess you can understand that lump of butter, what happened? It got stuck to him and they went looking for it all over the room. And then they went along looking for that lump of butter all over the room. Okay, so class, I'll be ending up the explanation of the text and in the next video, I'll be completing with the explanation. Okay, so I guess you have all read the text and have understood the explanation well. Still, if you have any problem, just write it down in the comment section so that I can clear your doubts. If you find difficult meanings, try to find it out from the dictionary and do it likewise. Okay, so keep a watch in the school website and make yourself updated with all the notifications given and follow the YouTube links as provided by the teachers and the class teachers, subject teachers, so that you do not lag behind in part of your studies. Okay, class, so stay well, all of you, and thank you.